Good morning. I'm so happy you have decided to join me today. We are talking about multiplying decimals. So our learning target today, our goal, is to understand how to multiply decimals using the standard algorithm. There's a few extra steps than if they were whole numbers, but we're going to try and make it fun. In fact, I might be a little silly today. I might embarrass you, and I'm sure if Bobby were watching this, he'd be utterly embarrassed. But I need you to remember something, and when I need to remember something, I make a chant or a song, and so we may be chanting and singing. We'll see. Let's first look at where we're going to be starting from today. We are working off of our class notebook. That's what I was trying to say. Okay, so we are going to be multiplying with decimals today. We are going to understand how to multiply with decimals using the standard algorithm. Let's look at step 1. Ignore the decimals. Now, here's where our chant comes in. Because most students want to, step 1, line up the decimals. And I totally understand, and I love where your heart is, because that is step 1 of adding and subtracting decimals. But I need you to remember that when we multiply, it's totally different. So here's where our chant comes in, because I want you to remember that we are not going to line up the decimals. It's going to make it a lot harder on you if we line up decimals, and we're not going to do it. I don't want you to work hard. I want you to work super easy. Okay, so here's our chant. Ready? I feel very silly doing this in a room all by myself, but here we are. Okay. Multiplying decimals, what do we do? Hey, multiplying decimals, what do we do? Do we line them up? No. Line them up? No. What do? We just ignore them. Okay, so now I want you to do it with me. I'm going to do it again. Don't make me do it by myself. I'd feel utterly ridiculous. I'm already feeling silly. Please do it with me. Okay. Multiplying decimals, what do we do? Hey, multiplying decimals, what do we do? Do we line them up? No. Line them up? No. What do? We ignore them. Okay. So, we ignore the decimals. We pretend like they aren't there. We are going to multiply like normal. All of our steps in figuring out what to do with the decimal will come later, okay? So we are going to do this problem over to the side. Let's see if we can still see our steps. So my problem is, what is it? 24.3 times 0.5. Okay, so if you look in my notes, I have a step where it's basically like the decimals aren't there. We aren't going to take them out, but we are going to pretend they aren't there. So let's multiply like normal, because that's step 2, multiply like normal. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 5 is 20, and I have my 1 here, so it's 21. And then 2 times 5 is 10. I have this 2 here, so I'm going to add 12. Okay, now let's look at what we do to figure out, because my product needs a decimal. If my factors have decimals, then my product will need a decimal. Okay, so let's see what our notes say. Highlight, or since I'm using a dry erase marker, I'm going to underline each place value behind the decimal for the whole problem. Okay, so the whole problem, that means both factors. So here's 1 and here's 2. Step 4, highlight or underline the same number of places in your product, starting on the right side. Place your decimal after the last underlined number. I bet you are highly confused because I changed this highlight and I didn't change this to highlight. So I'm so sorry. This should say highlighted or underlined number. So I'm going to do this and this because I underline it 1, 2. So I'm starting on the right-hand side, like my notes say, underlining 1, 2, and putting my decimal. Okay, let's look and see if this is reasonable. My answer. If I have multiplied 24 by not a whole number, but a part of a number, I would actually make my number smaller. It's almost like cutting it in half. So this is reasonable. Okay, let's look at a whole number. I wanted to show you this first because when you are underlining your factors, you need to underline the place values after the decimal in the entire problem. So that's why I showed this where our bottom factor has a decimal. So let's look at another one really fast. And that might be easier for us to see if it's reasonable. Multiplying decimals, what do we do? Hey, multiplying decimals, what do we do? Do we line them up? No. Line them up? No. What do? We ignore them. Okay, so I'm ignoring that there's a decimal right here, and I am going to multiply like normal. 1 times 3 is 3. 0 times 3 is 0. And 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, I have taken care of steps 1 and 2. Step 3, underline the place values behind the decimal in your factors. So I'm going to underline here and here. Then step 4, starting at the right-hand side, underline the exact same number and put a decimal under that last number. So we're going to highlight, or underline, decimal. Now let's look and see if this is reasonable. If I multiply 5 times 3, should I get 15? Yes, this is reasonable. Okay. Let's do one more. We're going to do 5.2 times 6.4. Are we going to line them up? No. But look, they are lined up, Miss Wagner. That's okay. We are still multiplying exactly how we would, even if the decimals were not there. Okay? So we're going to ignore them and multiply like normal. 2 times 4 is 8. 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, starting my second line, so I'm going to put that 0 in. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry my 1. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 1 is 31. Add them up. Sorry, I wrote a little too big. Okay, so 8, 2, 3, 3. Okay, let's look. Underline all the place values behind the decimal in your factors. Okay, so we have 1 here, 2. Step 4, starting on the right-hand side of your product, underline the same number. Well, I underlined 2 place values, so I'm going to underline 2, 1, 2, and put a decimal. So I'm going to do the first couple with you so you can see how to highlight on your homework. So let's find my highlighter. Make it a little bit, there we go. Okay, In questions 1 through 4, place the decimal in the product. Well, there are two ways you could solve for this. First of all, you could see what is reasonable, or you could do my method. And I would prefer you to practice doing the method of highlighting, okay? So let's look at this. 2 times 32 hundredths. Now the 64 is correct. We just need to know where to put in the decimal. So I'm looking for my decimal in my factors. I have 1 here. So I'm going to highlight each number past the decimal, or each digit. I've highlighted 2. So starting on my right-hand side of my product, I'm going to highlight, place my decimal right on that side of the highlighted. Okay? Now let's do one of these where we have lined them up by the standard algorithm. Okay, first we multiply like normal. 5 times 5 is 25. 0 times 5 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Okay, then I'm going to highlight. Look at my factors. I have 1 with the decimal. I'm going to highlight 1 number behind the decimal. Starting on the right-hand side, highlight the same number, and then that's where my decimal goes. Check out 9 and 12. We are going to use our rule of 10 on these. I know when we start trying to multiply with a lot of zeros, we tend to get mixed up. Please use your rule of 10 on number 9 and 12. You may have to go back and watch my video on the rule of 10 and what happens on the rule of 10, but please use my rule of 10. Makes it a lot easier on yourself. Okay, friends, I hope you enjoyed my silly chant. I hope you enjoy multiplying with decimals as much as I do, and I will see you on Friday.